mandate, the State Department, in liaison with other stakeholders, seeks to promote the participation of Kenya's diaspora in democratic processes. And we're in consultation and in contact with the IEBC in this regard. Despite the gains made, we are not complacent, for these are indeed challenging times. The global landscape is continuously evolving, often unpredictably, and more often into unknown and hitherto unseen challenges. Human trafficking, involving even our own diaspora across the globe, seems to be one step ahead of governments. Unemployment rates are high, both at home and sometimes within the diaspora. And of course, we have a youth bulge. These challenges, ladies and gentlemen, and the new opportunities from our New Point mandate called for a new review and perhaps overhaul of our former diaspora policy, and which is why we are here. Previously, we spoke of exploiting the potential and harnessing the diaspora, but we wish to change this narrative to partnerships, inclusion, additions, working together, brotherhood, holding hands together. So the revised policy will go a long way in making sure every Kenyan's welfare is taken care of and pathways for partnerships are created for inclusion into the national development agenda as envisioned in the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, the better. In closing our opening remarks, I reiterate my gratitude for the invaluable support we have received from the IOM. Right from the beginning, they have facilitated our workshops, they have facilitated our consultant, and they continue to support us. Even they will continue to support us to the very end of the diaspora policy review. Together, we are setting a new standard for government engagement with the diaspora. Together, we are building a legacy of service to our brothers and sisters beyond the Kenyan borders. It is my hope that our discussions today will enrich the document. Thank you so much for having logged in. Thank you so much for being with us. And now I hand over to my colleague, Mr. Maura, our head of planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barozi Helen, for those good introductory remarks. And welcome everybody to this meeting. Dear diaspora friends, this is the second meeting or the second chance that you are trying to get some information from you. We had another questionnaire that we collected very important, critical input from you. This ran from 20th March up to mid-April, where we had very, very valuable inputs. We had over 200 respondents, which we have incorporated into the draft that we want to share with you. And the purpose of this meeting, as per the Barozi Helen, is that we want to further it and ensure that we have incorporated what we had indicated. And for that case, I'm going to ask my colleague, Mr. Mondu, to do the presentation of the draft. Then from that, we shall ask Mr. Olo to moderate the plenary session. Welcome, Mr. Mondu.
Thank you very much, Director, Ambassador Isaiah Kabira, Ambassador Helen, distinguished ladies and gentlemen in the diaspora. I'm going to make a short presentation on the draft diaspora policy 2024, just to give you an idea of what really the contents of the policy are, but the details are in the draft. So the outline of the presentation will cover the background of the policy environment, strategic positioning, goal and objectives of the policy, the rationale behind reviewing and developing the diaspora policy 2024, situation analysis, areas identified as policy areas, how it will be implemented, and also the monitoring and evaluation framework. Then finally, there will be an interactive session. So just to start is the mandate of the State Department, which basically informs a lot of what is contained in the policy. And Balozi Helen has already alluded to this 9-point mandate, which, if you allow me, because of time, I'll summarize in the house on your left side of the screen, which says that really the diaspora policy is conceptualized around protecting, around engaging, around empowering, and finally around prospering the diaspora. So we want a diaspora that is thriving wherever they are. As far as the background is concerned, we all appreciate the fact that Kenyans have been moving historically across different parts of the world, whether to, seek advanced training, in search for job opportunities, education, at times political reasons, and many other reasons that have made Kenyans to migrate to different parts of the world. And as such, besides Kenya, diaspora is placed at the core of most countries internationally, foreign policy, and that the diaspora a catalyst of social and economic development in countries of origin, but also countries where they migrate to. So for purposes of this policy, we are defining the diaspora as persons of Kenyan origin, this being foreign citizens of Kenyan origin or descent, and also non-resident Kenyans, that is Kenyans holding a Kenyan passport or are having dual citizenship but reside outside the country. But there are other definitions by IOM, the African Union, among others. To the policy environment, we appreciate that the Kenyan context is not happening in a vacuum, and therefore the policy is developed under the background of the Global Compact of Migration, that is at the international front, the UN Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development, and then at the regional level, the African Union Agenda 2063, East African Community Vision 2050. Then at the national level, we have the Constitution, which pronounces itself on matters diaspora, the Kenya Vision 2030, the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. And we also have policies, specific policies and legislation that also inform preparation of the policy. Then as far as the strategic positioning is concerned, we all recognize that the Kenya Vision 2030 acknowledges the diaspora as a critical constituency in achieving the country's socioeconomic transformation. And this is because the diaspora is a pool of highly skilled labor, which can actually change the country or contribute to the transformation of the country. But also in terms of remittances, which have been mentioned before, and which we cannot ignore, we've seen a growth in remittances over the years from around $2 million US dollars in 2018 to around $4.19 million in 2023. And the latest figures from the CBK also point to an increase in the remittances. And therefore, it becomes very important for Kenya to strategically plan for the safe and secure mobility of its people. And in that case, the policy 2024 gives a framework for safeguarding the interests of Kenyans abroad, but also ensuring that they are included in nation building locally. To the goal and objectives of the policy seeks to protect, as I said, engage, empower, and prosper Kenyans in the diaspora. And the objectives of these are to protect the rights and promote the welfare and interests of Kenyans abroad, strengthen partnerships between the government and the diaspora, and also facilitate diaspora savings, investments, and remittances. But also, we also facilitate the placement of Kenyans in the international jobs market so that we can continue to grow the population of Kenyans in the diaspora. To the rationale of developing the policy, we come from a point of understanding that the number of Kenyans in the diaspora has been growing exponentially over the years. And this has brought about opportunities, but also comes with some welfare issues that will require to be handled. We also appreciate that the diaspora is an integral part of the Kenyan economy and the social fabric. And so the government has an obligation to engage the Kenyan diaspora in a more constructive and productive manner. And therefore, the policy bridges the gap that is existing between the 2014 draft and the current obtaining situation by providing the necessary framework to protect Kenyans, but also to entrenches parameters on how to mainstream the Kenyan diaspora into the national development process. Briefly, I will touch on the situation analysis, whereby we appreciate that by 2020, according to the latest data that we have, 21.4% of all residents of countries in the Oceania, that is Australia, New Zealand, and various Pacific islands, constituted migrants. And that in Northern America, that population constituted 15.7%, while in Europe, up to around 11.6% of the population were migrants. But then in other parts of the world, a smaller figure of 2.3% or less of the population. But when you turn it around and check other parameters or use different groupings, you realize that if you considered, for example, the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, then that would even outweigh or, supersede the Oceania, whereby 52.7% of the residents of those countries are actually migrants. That is as per UN data. Then again, to further analysis of the situation, we note that the United States has had more international migrants than any other country in the world. And that in 2020, where, this data was obtained, international migrants accounted for at least half the population of the Middle East nations. As I said earlier on, are up to around 52.7% of the population in the Middle East. Most Middle East countries is migrants. Then on the issue of source countries, we note that India remains the top origin country for the world's migrants, and that in terms of remittances, we saw a decline up to 2020, especially due to the coronavirus. But then since there has been a rising trend in remittances globally. At the local level in Kenya, as I said earlier on, our remittances from the diaspora have been growing. And as you can see the two graphs there, the orange graph representing the year 2022, the green 2023, and we can see that there is an upward trend in growth in remittances. I move to the composition of the Kenyan diaspora, which constitutes skilled professionals. But then we also have labor migrants, family migrants, retirees. We also have students who go out there to study. We also have those who go out to do business or invest. Others travel for medical reasons. But then we also have a number that travels because of they're refugees or are seeking asylum. Then On the achievements, I will not dwell on this a lot because Ambassador Helen has already touched on this, but ideally, we've done evacuations and repatriations of Kenyans. We've engaged the diaspora in different parts of the world. We've also participated in negotiation of bilateral labor agreements, but also the mobile consular services, which have been offered in most of your cities. Then also in collaboration with the CBK, development and launch of the DAO CSD, which is an online platform that enables you to transact in government securities from wherever you are. And then pre-departure training in collaboration with other agencies, digitalization of government services, but also the discourse on participation of the diaspora in democratic processes, whereby progressively we've seen more and more countries, participate or provide an opportunity for the diaspora to vote. In terms of the challenges, we have many of them, but I will just identify 4. Non-registration by Kenyans abroad with the Kenyan missions. Of course, this affects the kind of data that we have on the diaspora. We also have data that is fragmented. We don't have one particular source of information for the Kenyans in the diaspora, just estimates. We also recognize the challenge of high cost of remitting money from the diaspora, but also the inadequacy in policy, legal, and institutional frameworks. So at this juncture, allow me to give some of the policy areas that have been identified in this policy. And the first one is rights, welfare, and interest of the diaspora. As indicated by Balozi, we put welfare first. Then there is diaspora savings, investments, remittances, and technology transfer, international job placement for Kenyans, and partnerships and engagement with the Kenyan diaspora. As far as rights, welfare, and interest of the diaspora is concerned, one of the key things that we prioritize in the draft is to map out Kenyan diaspora geographically and create a diaspora database that would help us to sort out the issue of fragmentation in data. Then we develop an evacuation and repatriation plan to guide in times of evacuations. Developing measures to protect, support, and promote the rights, welfare, and interests of Kenyans. Facilitating repatriation and evacuation of Kenyans and mortal remains of the deceased, but also coming up with a reintegration program or programs for diaspora returnees. And then promoting the participation of Kenyan diaspora in democratic processes. To mention but a few, but there are more others. Maybe I can just close that by mentioning that we're also developing and implementing a mental health action plan, because mental issues or mental health issues have become a critical issue. On savings, investments, remittances, and technology transfer, the policy prioritizes strengthening remittance infrastructure as well as developing incentive framework to facilitate diaspora remittances, incentivizing diaspora savings in local financial institutions, facilitating the portability of knowledge, skills, and innovation, as well as technical resources available in the diaspora back home, establishing new and enhancing trade and investment channels in order to promote further local investment by the diaspora. And then to partnerships and engagement with the diaspora. The policy prioritizes creation of a diaspora summit or council that would help to strengthen the relationship between the government and the diaspora, establishing a framework for partnership and engagement with county governments, that is between the diaspora and county governments, decentralizing government services to Kenyans in the diaspora to ensure that there is better accessibility and effectiveness in service delivery, and also establishing some mechanisms for awarding exemplary diaspora initiatives. We've also, or rather, we've also prioritized facilitating the establishment of cultural centers, establishing a mechanism for collaboration with business member organizations, and also collaboration with the private recruitment agencies. Then finally, international job placement for Kenyans. The policy prioritizes establishment and operationalization of the diaspora placement agency, which would help to, place Kenyans in international jobs. Establishing a mechanism for collaboration with the private recruitment agencies or associations. Developing a database for skills, knowledge, and expertise, and also facilitating skills, knowledge, and technology transfer for Kenyans in the diaspora. Then also the issue of accreditation and endorsement of Kenya's qualifications and skills with the foreign countries. And finally, coming up with a framework to support Kenyans in the diaspora in harnessing opportunities for employment and enterprise development. And this would be in collaboration with business member organizations or the private sector. So as far as the policy implementation is concerned, these are some of the players that have been identified as key in implementing the policy. That is ministries, departments, and agencies, the county governments, parliament, diaspora associations, and the diaspora development partners, the private sector, civil society organizations, just to mention but a few of the many other players that would play a part in implementing the policy. Then we expect that implementation of the policy will be monitored. And there will also be evaluation, basically to check whether we are on track in achieving the objectives that are set out, but also to identify challenges that may derail implementation and design corrective measures to ensure that we achieve the targeted results. Then that evaluation that will be undertaken will inform performance and review of the policy. Then finally, there will be, there is proposed that the policy will be reviewed after every 10 years of implementation or as need arises. This is just to ensure that we are in tandem with changing laws, policies, and regulations, but also to accommodate emerging issues in the global space. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to me. I think I hand over now back to the director. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maundu. I think now I call upon Barozi Olo, who has been assisting us in coming up with this document, to moderate the session together with Barozi Helen. Karibu sana, the two Barozis.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Director, Mr. Maura, and let me also thank Ambassador Helen Gichui, who has given us a very, very good introduction to this webinar today. Let me also thank all the Kenyans and diaspora present here today for this very, very important discussion, this webinar. First of all, let me say that we immediately had a draft document. This draft document was circulated to the diaspora. And I would want to thank all those diasporians who participated and gave us their interview. Particularly, I want to acknowledge some maybe 8 people here whom I think most of their views were very, very useful to coming up with the draft that we have. And that is Mr. George Omburo, Dr. George Omburo, Adoga Kiarangwa, Maurice Ndole, David Ogega, Margaret Ruhoff, Wycliffe Adero, Bernard Kaviu, Dr. Bernard Kaviu, Dr. Dennis Otingo Onyango. I would also want to take this opportunity also to thank and acknowledge the very wonderful contribution that we received from over 4,000 diasporians, whom their input has been very, very valuable in terms of improving the document as it is. Ladies and gentlemen, the presentation has been done, and I want to thank Mr. Maundu. I think he has taken us through, giving us the outline and giving us the structure of how our policy is looking like. And I think at this very juncture, what I would want to say is that I want to call upon participants to give their views further, and also to acknowledge that this is basically in line with the public participation. Now, we all realize that any document, any government document nowadays has to be subjected to public participation. And I believe that your participation will go a long way in endearing the final document that will be subjected to validation to the diaspora. I don't know how we are going to do it, but maybe you can raise up your hand. I think we have a team that is also taking care of all the views that will be presented. You can raise up your hand, and then I will give you the floor. And then I would also encourage that we also use the chat. There is a chat, an active chat, an active chat box, which I will encourage you also to, just put down something. There's a team that is in place that will be taking down all the things, all the issues as they are raised. And later on, at the tail end of this, we shall be able to just go over them and ensure that they are responded to. And of course, those that are, comments on the document will also be taken down so that they can form part of what we shall be presenting later on. I think without further ado, it is now my honor and pleasure to open the floor for discussion. And I would want to request that those of us who have something to say, you raise up your hand. Thank you so much.
So we already have 4 hands, Ambassador Olo. We have Danson Mukile, we have Ambassador Beja Zia, and we have Linda Wamalwa and Lydia Ogoti in that order. And I think John Karanja has just put up his hand. So Danson Mukile first. Danson?
Thank you so much, Balozi. It's good to hear from you. I hope you are well. And thank you so much for the policy. I think this is quite improved from the 2014. And I just really appreciate the hard work you have put in to make sure that you have this wonderful document. I'll just go quickly to my comment. I had the chance to read the policy draft, and I also submitted my views, my feedback. Unfortunately, I haven't seen it being captured. I know there are thousands of feedback coming from the diaspora, but I'll just want to, Balozi, bring you to section 4.213 for the diaspora summit that has been suggested. It is my contrary view that this is an area that needs to be improved, come out so clearly so that the diaspora will have at least a form of a governing body. We have had even the president pronounce himself on this. So I have suggestion that we shouldn't have the Diaspora Summit. Instead, let us have the Kenya Diaspora Council. I know there was suggestion about NADOC in the previous policy, and it could be good to have it set up as Kenya Diaspora Council, because in practice, internationally, you realize that many countries, including the United States, Nigeria, Philippines, Ireland, India, Pakistan, among others, for the best practice, they have adopted the council. So if we have the summit to kind of take us out, and you know so well also the African Union with the diaspora, they're going to establish a council as well, the African Council. So we need to have a body that can be adopted in other international organizations. In terms of their functions, they also have to come out so clearly with achievable and implementation plan. As the way it is, I am submitting about 6 of them. They're the council, because this will be the council being led by the diasporian, and it will be supporting the State Department for the diaspora. It is good that to have a very clear way of how they should operate. It's my humble submission that the council should cooperate with the State Department to coordinate the diaspora sessions and or organization in the diaspora. Also, submitting that the council should recommend and promote the opportunities for Kenyans in different sectors in the diaspora for the national development. The council should provide some strategic and coordinational oversight in terms of governance. The council should also promote the shared heritage, aspiration, and culture within the diaspora, and because it's very clear that the diaspora should act as ambassadors. So the council should promote that, and should also collaborate with the Ministry of Diaspora to organize the annual Diaspora Summit. So my submission is that the Diaspora Summit should be an annual event done in collaboration with the State Department annually, other than giving it as a body. In addition to that, in terms of how this council should be formed, you have suggested that it should be nominated from the association. I think that is a differentiate for the diasporian, because you have many professionals who might not be part of the associations, but they're very skillful and very critical resource. And I believe that this council should be formed through a selection panel, whereby have a panel set up by the diaspora to select the council members from each 5 regions that have been set out. And now these individuals will be given that mandate to run the council and coordinate. And it brings in some accountability as well, because it will be formed from the side of the Kenyan side, because we have thousands and thousands of associations. I think Balozi have had a chance to come to the diaspora, and we've seen how many associations we have, so many of them, and coordination has been an issue. There's a lot of replication of the function. We have so many even groupings in terms of tribe. So we don't want that one to be in the same format. So it's my humble submission, and have a written statement of the same, that part should be amended clearly, so that when the policy comes out, it gives the direction on how the diaspora should be governed. Thank you.
Ambassador Beja. Ambassador Beja. We can move on to Lydia Ogoti.
No. Am I audible?
Very faint. You're very, very faint.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. I am from the Kenya Diaspora Alliance Secretariat, but the analysis I'm giving is solely mine. So it shouldn't be taken as part of the presentation of Kenya Diaspora Alliance Secretariat. So I was so much interested in the monitoring and the evaluation of how the diasporas have been performing, and how the Department of Diaspora is going to focus its activities on the diaspora welfare. But one is to appreciate the trajectory of remittances from 2018, when it was around $2 billion to the current one, around 4.5 billion US dollars of the remittances. But the 4.5 billion dollars remittances can only be attributed to the remitters who sent through the known channels. But you will find that there is so much money that is coming in the economy and being wasted right, left, and center without observing the right channels. There is a research to that shows whatever is coming in is about 65% of the total amount that comes as a form of remittances. So I think going forward, especially in safeguarding the interests of the diasporas, that the channel of remittances should be reviewed. And finally, on the final submission on the report regarding monitoring and evaluation, I think at the end of the day, it should lead to a sessional paper that is done either by stakeholders, and it is sent to the cabinet, and finally it goes to parliament so that it is debated and enacted to become law. So all these submissions should be contained into a sessional paper, sent to the cabinet, and finally to parliament for enactment as a law. Thank you so much, and may God bless you all.
There was Lydia Ogoti.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, Mheshimiwa. And I would like to contribute as a member of the public. I am a musician by profession, and I've been practicing cultural ambassadorship for over 18 years now. And I am very interested in the diaspora matters because I have associated with the diaspora from time to time from a cultural aspect. And my interest is how is the diaspora associations or the creation of cultural hubs or cultural centers going to help us as members of the public who have associations with people in the diaspora, help us to promote matters of culture and heritage. I would like to know how the government or the State Department is going to liaise with the diasporas to create programs that deal with development locally, because we have activities. Sometimes I can give you a very quick scenario where I was selected by another country in Africa to represent Kenya, but I did not get the accorded support, and even the diasporans in that country were not aware that a Kenya had come to represent them. So there's a lot of loopholes from the ministerial level up to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where such communication is not taken into consideration or is not even put on the table. How can we ease the communication? How can we work directly or indirectly to matters that promote the diasporas out there and within the country? Thank you very much.
Last but not least, well, John Karanja, then Lydia Wamalwa, and then we can maybe have responses and take the second round. Mr. Ambassador Law, is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. That's fine, Balozi.
Okay, so John Karanja followed by Lydia, then we respond. I'll give first priority to Ambassador Law to respond, and then we can take the second round.
Thank you, Ambassador Helen. My name is John Karanja, and I'm based in the UK. I attended the DC23 last year at the KICC, and I actually attended the welfare summit that you chaired, and thank you for following it up, because it is a very key essence of us moving outside of the country. If we get the welfare and the rights of the Kenyans living abroad right, everything else will fall in place. If we don't, nothing else will work. My suggestion at the last meeting was, when the policy was being drafted, I suggested that we change the way we refer to Kenyan workers going abroad as migrant workers. The reason was, when they get to the stations they're going to, the term migrant workers is frowned upon, and it doesn't give them a good starting point as employees and as residents of those countries. And secondly, my next point was, the pre-departure briefing is very good, but I would also suggest that we have a repatriation briefing, because in some cases one might travel abroad and after a short while they find out it's not as good as they expected and they would like to return. So there is no avenue for anyone to return after they've been abroad, and that's where the downward spiral begins, and the stresses, the mental health and the issues begin. So I would suggest, if there was something or a route for someone to return once they've been abroad, when they find out it's not the best place they would like to be, if you can incorporate that, that would be good. Thank you very much.
Linda? Linda? Okay, maybe we can take those questions and start with Linda when we get back. Ambassador Law, do you want to go ahead? I'm not sure if Ambassador Kabira is online. He can also go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you, Ambassador Helen. I have a couple of questions. The first was to the presenter of the situation analysis. It would have been amazing to hear the breakdown of the migrants of African origin, and especially Kenyans, to know the numbers that are out here, but I appreciate that this is data that is still being collected, but it would be good to know. I have a couple of questions or suggestions on the policy items. On 3.1, just to echo what the previous speaker had said, I would suggest that we initiate integration programs for Kenyans arriving in new countries. Current measures in the policy point to focus on pre-departure training, repatriation, and reintegration of returnees, which is extremely important, but we overlook the needs of the people who land, the newcomers who land abroad. And then a lot of issues happen within the first 6 to 12 months. And addressing this would significantly help with the mental health concerns that rise up from being in a different environment. On issue 3.2, on diaspora savings, investment, remittance, and technology transfer, I recommend we have pathways for the diaspora to collaborate with local MSCs so that they bring products abroad. I have seen a lot happening in the States, which I commend. I was wondering if it is possible for them, for the team to consider incorporating export processing zones so that these products benefit from special economic zone tax as incentives for foreign direct investment. Thirdly, on partnership and engagement, I recognize government efforts to address the diaspora government mistrust as noted in 332. A critical additional to policy 333 is ensuring diaspora voting rights. Right now, not every diaspora member is able to vote, even though we are the highest foreign currency income earner. So it would be great that all diaspora members are given access to this fundamental civic right. And finally, on 3.4, which is on international job placement, I would ask if we would, I have 2 points on this, if we would consider advocating for a dual focus, not just on external, but also internal opportunities. There are a lot of us who would be willing to add value to projects back home. And some of us, not myself, some of us have naturalized here and might be citizens already in the diaspora, but would want to give back home. So it would be great if, with the whole element of dual citizenship and country of origin, being able to not be recognized as a foreigner, but as a local. And this would facilitate a lot, even in terms of property ownership back home. And that way we benefit from both, and it's not just quote unquote a brain drain. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador Olo. Do you want to take the first lot? And if Ambassador Kabira is there, he does the second, and then I'll come in last.
Okay, thank you so much, Ambassador Helen, and let me thank those people who are presented. I think these views that you have given us are very, very important. But let me start with Dr. Mukile, and let me also acknowledge that we received quite a lot of feedback. I'm sure that, of course, we could not mention everybody, but we received even the sections that Dr. Mukili have referred about, especially the issue of the Diaspora Summit. I think it's something that has come out very, very strongly. And it is something, if you recall, in the old policy, we were talking about the NADICO, the National Diaspora Council of Kenya. And even before that, we had talked about the National Consortium, Diaspora Consortium of Kenya. And I think it is something that the police should speak to. I think before the arguments were in terms of operationalizing the NADICO, and I believe it's something that should have been done. But now with the reviewed policy, we are going to bring it. It may not come, it's coming out as the summit as you have commented, but I think depending on this, what you have presented probably, we could think about it and see whether we call it Kenya Diaspora Council. So I think something that we will, before we go for the validation, certainly we'll find space in the review of the diaspora policy. Then on the issue of the functions, I've noted what you have mentioned. I believe those are the functions that if you also look at the older document, you see those are the functions basically that were put for the NADICO, and I believe they are good. The strategic oversight, the Diaspora Act, to act as the ambassadors and coordinate with the State Department for Diaspora, and the issue of the annual Diaspora, event. I think this is something that the policy needs to speak about strongly, and I'm very sure that before the final document is validated, it will be done. I like the idea of your selection panel because I think this is what was missing in the old document, in our earlier proposal of the NADIC and even the Diaspora Consortium. What was not very clear is how really to get the representatives. And I think this is a very emotive sort of aspect because when it comes to the selection, normally it is very, very emotive. And I think this is probably what might have derailed the operationalization of the NADICO as earlier on in this age. But I think now with the strong will that we have in the State Department, I believe this will be done and a way will be found on how the representatives will be elected. So I thank you for that, and I believe it will find space in the final document, which will be validated soon. On Ambassador Venja, you have talked of the monitoring and evaluation, and I want to draw your attention to the recent official state visit to US, and the PCS, that's the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs, do mention about this policy. And I think one of the things he said was that a sessional paper will be done. So I think you are spot on. And I believe immediately after this document has been validated, the team will have to think on how a sessional paper will be done. And of course, there's also the other issue of the foreign affairs policy. And I think he spoke of a sessional paper being done for that too. And basically, this is to entrench this thing. You know, the old policy was not entrenched in law. And I think now with what's going on, with the new resolve, a sessional paper will be done, and this will be part of really entrenching it in law. And I think that will be taken on board. Now, I've also noted your other points on monitoring and evaluation, especially with regard to some of the players. And I believe once we embark on finalizing the final document for validation, will be taken on board. Madam Lydia, thank you. You're a musician, and I believe if you look at the policy under engagement, this is one of the strong points within the policies, dialogue and engagement, and the issue of diaspora associations. Now, diaspora associations were basically started following the launch of the earlier policy. And I believe each and everywhere where our missions are there abroad, and even where they are not, we have diaspora associations, which have been very, very vibrant. A lot of ground has been covered through the diaspora associations. So the policy, the current policy, is still emphasizing on engagement through the diaspora associations. And the issue of cultural hubs, will be through the associations. But the challenge, of course, Lydia, which I'm very sure you must be aware of, is the multiplicity of the associations, because again, we've had cases whereby, rivalry within the associations themselves have bedeviled some of our, the engagement through the associations. We have had associations that some are based on, let's say, the chama, some are based on other considerations. But I think the policy here is that in spite of all those multiple other associations, we emphasize on an overall, an umbrella associations. And the briefing that the heads of missions have normally is to engage all of them and ensure that there is a diaspora association and umbrella association that is able to capture all Kenyans. So even those like the musicians in the cultural, it would be important to align yourself with one of those associations, and through that you'll be able to get information and services through our heads of missions. And of course, one of the things is that culture is one of the pillars of foreign policy, Kenya's foreign policy. And I believe it works very well. It works very well in terms of engaging our diaspora and culture. Mr. Karanja, I agree with you. What is in vogue is to not to call, migrant workers. I know this has been a very, very big debate. I remember during our workshop, the last one we had, we talked of migrant workers, but I think we need to move away from these migrant workers. Other countries, especially Middle East, they don't nowadays speak migrant workers, but they talk of, experts, and we look at the document again, and we will find a word that would really be in tandem with the current practices, ILO and IOM, so that we do not have a situation whereby our Kenyan workers are demeaned by the fact of migrants. I'm sure this will be rectified. Now, on the issue of pre-departure briefing, now, of course, this is good, and I agree. You know, there are cases where pre-departure briefing happens, but once somebody goes abroad, then things changes, especially when you look at, there have been cases of students. You find students, they go to a country and that culture shock, some of them would go, there were cases of when our students went to Russia, some of them went when it was very, very cold, Moscow, I think this 2-3 years ago. And they were not really briefed on what to expect. And this led to emotional stress. And I think it's something that needs really to be taken care of. I'm happy to say that what the State Department for Diaspora, of course, is now planning to have, to have diplomats solely dedicated to issues of diaspora. And I believe once this is done, and of course it features in the policy, and they'll be taking it upon themselves to undertake this kind of issues of really preparing Kenyans who have just landed in foreign lands, and how to live there, and how, how to work around the culture shock. And of course, it is also mentioned in the policy about the counseling, which is also very, very important. I believe the counseling unit of the State Department for Diaspora Affairs will be making sure that these programs are organized for this kind of, our diasporians who have just landed in foreign countries. Linda, quite a number of issues, and I've taken notes. The issue of the breakdown of migrant of Kenyans outside, I think I've noted that. Now, 3.1, initiating the orientation program for newcomers. I've just talked about that, and I believe the mental health department, or rather the counseling unit of the State Department, this is something that probably will need to mention somewhere under the welfare. Yeah, so it will need to come out very, very clearly. Now, noted also the pathways, that is 3.2 in the document. Yes, 3.2 in the document. I've noted that, and it will be worked on. Now, on engagement, the diaspora rights, I think there's quite a lot that still needs to be done in terms of, the democratic process, the voting rights of the diaspora. And this time, quite a number of literature has been collected regarding the challenges that the diasporas have been encountering in terms of voting, and some of them are to do with changing certain, laws of IBC. In the 2022, I participated in this in the country where I was, and obviously there are laws that are, making the diaspora not participate in the elections, and I hope this time they will not take, IBC to court the way they did last time. But this needs to be looked at well in advance. The issue of registration, you cannot tell the diaspora to register at the same time that you are registered. You give them 2 weeks. The issue of voting, I think there are many, many, many issues that needs to be looked at. And I think the policy should come out very, very clearly, and that engagement with IEBC should start early enough so that a whole report is given on how the diaspora can effectively participate. On the international jobs, that is 3.4 years. The issue, of course, we are talking about international jobs, but you are right. Now we have what we call technology transfer, because you see, even those people in the diaspora, there are also opportunities here, and we are calling it transfer, and it is already in the policy. We used to talk about the brain drain. Of course, now we are talking about the brain drain, and I think that is recognized. And probably we need to mention it. It is latently mentioned, but if you look at the issue of technology transfer is acknowledging that we have some diasporians who are abroad and have got critical knowledge that we as a country do need. And I think once this policy is implemented and for the section, then the diaspora who are expertise, who have experts abroad, would definitely and certainly be encouraged to transfer those knowledge back at home so that they're able to contribute to the development of this wonderful country. Balozi Helen, I think those are the issues that have been raised that I would want to react on, and also to thank all those people who have raised them, that these are very, very points that will be taken on board as we move towards finalizing. Thank you so much.
Ambassador Kabira, did you have something to add before I just finalize?
Thank you very much, Balozi Helen and Balozi Washington and the entire team that has been working on this. First, I really want to commend all those who've been behind this policy. I also want to salute members of our diaspora who have taken time. As we've been told, over 4,000 submissions were made. We greatly appreciate this, and it only goes to prove that we are slowly dealing with the trust deficit that has always been there between the diaspora and government, because that's the only way we're going to work together as partners. I also want to salute the great people of Australia for your very proactive role as we came up with this diaspora policy. Nice to hear of some many familiar voices that I used to deal with during my time in Australia. I think the Australia diaspora really is a case study in many ways in terms of how we can effectively deal with issues of diaspora. Now, as I said, really, this diaspora policy offers us a good opportunity to really see how we can work very closely and institutionalize the way that we've always worked with Kenyans in the diaspora. I think Balozi Washington has addressed most of the issues that have been addressed, but I just want to echo the issue as raised by one of the participants, that really the diaspora is the biggest foreign exchange earner for our country, and being so actively engaged in our economic process, there's no reason why they should not be also wholly engaged with our political process that in many ways determines our social and political discourse. As Balozi Washington has said, it's a matter of engaging the IEBC. The IEBC has over the years hidden under the issue that they were told about progressive involvement of Kenyans in the diaspora in the voting process. But I think if Kenyans in the diaspora really put more pressure on IEBC, of course, IEBC has now built capacity. I think in the first year we had elections in about 3-4 countries. The last time we had nearly 9 countries. There's a reassurance that we are going to have more countries roped in during the next elections. And I hope Australia will be one of the considerations. I love the issue of the pre-departure. I wish to report that as a department, we are working on pre-departure manuals that are country-specific because Kenyans face different circumstances whenever they land in a country. So we are actively engaged in trying to come up with those pre-departure. I loved what was talked about, the need for also helping Kenyans in the first year of settlement in a new country. It's not easy, and that's one way, and I think we need to work with you very closely because the first year really determines how somebody settles into a new country. So we look forward to working very closely with the members of the Kenyan diaspora so that we see how best we can help you as you settle down. I also love the issue of reintegration because we also seen a lot of challenges about Kenyans who are coming back home. And I think the diaspora policy should try and institutionalize how we can create mechanisms within the department that can help Kenyans who are coming back and see how best, because it's not easy. You've been out there for the last 20 years, and coming back, you're in a near foreign land. So we really look forward to working with you. And as I said, it's a partnership that we have with you. We want to help you create a plan of reintegration, because at the end of the day, coming back home, you have to have a plan. And those remittances that you make, as was rightfully said, we don't just see you as a remittance for your remittances. We see you as a key integral part of our development process. And so we should find ways through the policy how we can come up with concrete ways to help Kenyans coming back to reintegrate. But reintegration also needs a plan. So really mine is I look forward to the implementation of this policy to ensure that we have a good, cordial working relationship where we see one another as partners. But thank you so much, the group from Australia, for all the nice contributions that you have made. Of course, the issue of who gets into the council, that one we need to crack our minds a bit, just to see that, one, there is good geographical representation, how we deal with the many associations, even the so-called umbrella associations now have become many, and that could be a deal breaker, the implementation of this policy and in the activation of the Kenya Diaspora Council. So we look forward to a lot of input from you Kenyans out there in how best we can have effective and fair representation to the council. Thank you very much, Balozi Helen, and I submit.
Thank you, Ambassador Kabira. Probably just to clarify a few points, I appreciate my colleagues, the ambassadors who have responded, and the responses are legit. We thank them for having taken time. On the Diaspora Summit document, we wish to entrench it in the Diaspora Policy document, but we have a separate document which speaks about the Diaspora Summit and how it is going to operate. And so what we have in this document is just a small synopsis. And I agree with Danson, a lot of what he has said is already contained in the main document. We have a difference of names. There's Diaspora Council, there's Diaspora Summit, there's Diaspora, but they're all speaking to the same thing. So we have achievable and implementation plan. We have clear operations of what it is they're going to do. We are also cognizant of the fact that there are missions and we don't want to duplicate what the missions are doing. So we had to be very careful on what we were putting as the mandate of the summit. However, once we have cleaned it up and taken your submissions, and I hope, Mukile, your submission was written and submitted to us, we'll be able to share it with the diaspora for their input. We also recognize that there's a lot of interest in this one. And we assure you the summit will be chosen by the diaspora. It will be for the diaspora, and all the regions will be represented as per what we envision now. It's just that we needed to be very sure how it's going to work out. Of course, maybe some segments may be a little bit displeased because we may not be able to take every single proposal because some of them contradict each other. So we will come up with a document that is acceptable to all the diaspora. And once it is done, we are going to share with you. But like we had mentioned, I think like Ambassador Beja had mentioned, because we want this policy to be entrenched in the law, we needed to mention the summit at some point. So Ogoti, in terms of our emails are very active. I'm not sure who you are coordinating with your participation. diaspora@mfa.go.ke is a very, very active email, and we usually respond very efficiently. If you have an activity where you think we can assist you, link up with the diaspora, please do not hesitate to get in touch with us. Of course, we are also cognizant that some of the items fall within the State Department for Foreign Affairs, and we'll be able to share with them once you share with us. John Karanja, I recall, your question about the issue of migrant workers and the naming of them thereof. Thank you for reminding us. I think we have so many things and we dropped that one. We are going to pick it up and take it back. On the issue of returnees, yes, there's a policy. We are coming up with a policy on how to reintegrate the returnees. It is not finalized yet, but it is something that is in the pipelines. It is in our documentation that we are thinking of how to reintegrate the returnees. Of course, we recognize the fact that there are some returnees we may not be able to integrate in terms of jobs. A lot of the returnees are looking for jobs in government. This may not be possible, but we are looking for ways of how to reintegrate them in the counties, to reintegrate them in development projects, because development projects do not necessarily mean jobs in the government. So it's just a question of how we are going to then frame that, share with the diaspora, and be able to implement it such that every returnee feels they're useful, feels their expertise has been put to good use, and they are not losing out on anything. On the export processing zones, His Excellency, the President, I think he mentioned in Atlanta, we are considering, the government is considering special economic zones for the diaspora. So this is something that is under discussions. It's being thought through. And once it has been thought through, it will be presented to the diaspora for them to be able to tap into that. So it is ongoing conversations. On voting rights, we're already engaging the IEBC very, very vigorously. We have had several meetings, but I want to also mention that the issue of bringing IEBC to vote has to make sense. They can't just come to vote. Sometimes 5,000 register, and at the end, only 30 come to vote. So the number has to justify bringing the equipment, because as much as it is the right, also we are prudent. We want to utilize the finances prudently. So if we have people indicating they want to vote, and then when voting comes, they go back home to vote, it's a bit discouraging, but we want to see if we can increase the numbers of the voting centers. And indeed, it is an ongoing conversation with IEBC. IEBC is engaged, and I think very soon they will be sending out a questionnaire asking how many people, or they'll be coming out to meet with the diaspora just to establish the data, how many people would be willing to vote in the different areas. That will then inform them coming out to vote, coming out to have the voting take place. I think on the issue of skills transfer, that has been spoken to. So I will give the chance to Kipchumba Kibwabok, Cyrus Robiro. He had his hand up, then he put it down. There is David Onyalo and Anthony Wanjiku. In that order, let me see if there's anybody else. I think those are the ones whose hands are up. Kipchumba? Seems like Kipchumba changed their mind. Cyrus?
Hi, I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Balozi Helen, for this good work, coming up with a policy, and above all, bringing us the diaspora to comment. I would not like to go into the issues raised, because for me, we have a question on where we are, the time frame, because I'm not sure when this meeting was called, and then we sent this to the members. It was about validation. So I'm not sure where we are. Can we still bring in comments? Because there are comments we brought already, but can we still bring in comments? What are the next steps? And maybe if you could address that, then we can see how we can proceed. Because if you're going to bring comments and the document is sealed yet already, then it does not make a lot of sense. That would be my take. Oh, but there, I'm calling in from Frankfurt in Germany. Thank you.
Thank you, Cyrus. David? David Onyalo?
Sorry. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Balozi Helen, for giving me the floor. And I want to start by thanking the Department of the Diaspora for seriously taking public engagement by engaging us in this kind of conversations. I'm participating from Ottawa, Canada, and although it's early here, I know that we have different time zones. I want to speak as an entrepreneur based in Canada on two key principles that touches on various parts of the diaspora policy document. The first one has to do with engaging the county government in terms of investments. And I'm talking from a practical point of view, whereby me and some of my colleagues based in the US, we wanted to invest in solar in the different countries. And we ran into some difficulties in terms of them preferring companies from other countries. I want to say this because we work with different investors, like for example, myself, Canadian investors, and I think there should be a special consideration when a Kenya diaspora brings in investors, a certain percentage, whatever that percentage is, should be allocated to people from diaspora being able to get access to those investments. We pay a lot of attention to remittances, and rightly so. But as we all know, most of us in diaspora are going to continue sending remittances for two main reasons. One is to support our family and friends in terms of issues around health and education, which is overwhelming right now for the Kenyan government to be able to do that on their own. So they rely on us to do that. But we want to shift from investing just in real estate to other areas of opportunities in the county government. I know that one of you mentioned the thoughts of bringing in a special economic zone for people in diaspora. I think as part of the implementation process, I think you should take that very seriously. I know that the diaspora department can do this on their own, which means that you have to engage different county governments. And when I brought this up at the KICC Diaspora Conference, PS Njogu did indicate that there's an opportunity to talk to the different countries to make sure that people in diasporas can actually invest in those counties where they come from, or rather across the country. So for me, it's a principal issue that maybe there's different section of the diaspora document, the policy document that can speak to that. The other thing I want to say is very, very specific is as well. I know that when this government was formed, there's a big emphasis on making sure that there's access to Kenyan agricultural products overseas. I have not seen a framework document or how that needs to be rolled out, because that's an important area that most of us in diaspora want to engage in, to make sure that our small business, our small farmers or big farmers can have access to global markets. So I have not seen I know there's a lot of emphasis that has been put on labor market mobility. I think equal effort should be put in terms of figuring out how the agricultural product food chain, global food chain can be worked out. The other second principle is in terms of corporate governance. I think that the appointing authorities, whether it's the president's office or different cabinet ministers, when it comes to the parastatals, we want to see people who live in diaspora with regional representation. I pointed to some of those positions. Right now, people don't have to be physically in Nairobi. Some of these meetings can take place in Zoom. So I think that if the government is taking seriously the idea of integrating diaspora in the social, economic, political fabric of the country, we want to start seeing appointments of somebody from, just example, Australia, Canada, UK, the US, without leaving anybody out, also receiving those appointments. So every time there's an appointment, I will be looking out if the government is really taking that seriously. I want by concluding that it's always good to talk about positive. I think that whoever's involved in the, and I know this takes years of work, the recent visit by His Excellency President Ruto to the US, I think was very, very successful. And I think that for us, it's been important in terms of the implementation of whatever was achieved, that we clearly see the diasporas, particularly those based in the US, involved in some of the implementation. So because I think this is a template, and we'd like His Excellency one day to visit Canada, and we can have similar conversation in terms of how the diaspora can get involved. So I just want to, before I finish, give a shout out to our current ambassador, Immaculate Wambura, who's been doing an excellent job in terms of making sure that we as entrepreneurs and businesses, we have the right contacts, we have the right information to be able to be part of building our great country, Kenya. So I'll stop there, and thanks so much again, Ambassador Helen, and all the officials from the State Department. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I can see Cyrus. Did you still want to speak? Your hand is still up.
I don't think so. I think I passed my point across. Yeah, and most of the things I wanted to actually touch on were already answered during your last answering round. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Colleagues, I also would wish to invite our other colleagues, the directors who are available here. If they would wish to also have an input, please raise your hands. I will see it and I will call you. Ambassador Lo, Ambassador Kabira, there's been some comments there. Would you want to respond?
Yeah, Ambassador Helen, thank you so much, my sister. I think most of those comments, some of them are questions and some of them, of course, have been addressed. But if I could start with my good brother Cyrus, I would want to just reiterate that we are still receiving comments. I mentioned that there is this process of, we got inputs, we did a survey, and we have tried to incorporate everything into the document that you now have. But you realize that the Constitution of Kenya requires that each public policy document has to be subjected to public participation. So what we are now doing basically is public participation. So we are still welcoming comments. In fact, from this public participation, a lot of issues are also going to come up. So we shall incorporate those that we are going to receive. And if you can do a written document, I think if you can submit something written, it will also be good. The validation exercise will be done later, and I believe the State Department for Diaspora will inform you of when it will be done. So yes, we are still, you can bring up the comments, what you have. Regarding the presentation by David Onyalo from Canada, this new policy is heavy on, on what the government can do for the diaspora. You see, before it was the other way around, but there's now a shift. It was what is it that we are getting from the diaspora? But now, what can the government do? And I believe one of the things that you have mentioned that is going to be looked into, will be put into focus, is this issue of how does the county government open up to the diaspora for investment? And I believe the new thinking is county governments have been brought on board. And if you look at the implementation part of it, you'll see the role that the county governments have been given. And I believe they'll be able to help the diaspora in terms of investment. Yes, there could be difficulties. And in fact, a lot of diaspora have voiced the issues of difficulties when they want to bring in investors. And I believe the State Department, this is an area which the relevant section should look at. How do we really help our diaspora, those that bring investors? How do we help them in terms of those difficulties they encounter? How do we link them up with the counties? Now, on the issue of the global markets for the agricultural markets, yes, this is something that I think is under policy. It is mentioned in the policy, But you see, the policy generally gives the general outline, but the details now will have to be worked on. And I believe that is something that the details will be worked on. Of course, the thinking is that even the government should be using the diaspora as basically the entry points to some of these markets. And I believe it will be done. Now, on the corporate governance, maybe Ambassador Ellen would like to speak to this, the issue of parastatals, appointments of the diaspora in these parastatals. So she alluded into it when she talked about him when you are interpreting. But now we have brought another perspective. I mean, you are there nowadays. You can use online platforms in terms of engagement. Yeah, so I think I will stop at that point. Thank you, Balozi.
There was, maybe just to say, there was two people I erroneously left out. Anthony Wanjiku indicates he might not be able to speak. And there was Kipchumba Kibwabok. Is he now available? Okay, he doesn't seem to be available. So, Ambassador Kabera, did you have something to add?
No, I think Balozi Washington has answered most of the issues, but I just wanted to highlight the issue that David has alluded to or talked about, the issue of the EPZ for the diaspora. He has called it, we must make it a principal issue. I want to give the example of AGOA. AGOA gives access to over 2,000 Kenyan products to access the US market. Unfortunately, we have concentrated a lot. We have assumed it's mainly about textiles. And this is where we can work very closely with the Kenyans in the diaspora to help us in accessing markets, to know what's in demand in the individual countries. Something like agriculture is a devolved responsibility of the county governments, but we have not seen much activity in this. And we see Kenyans in the diaspora as real focal points of helping our small-scale businesses, as David has pointed out, to access some of these markets. We have very good products out there in the counties that are not having access to markets, that are not being subjected to value addition. And this is definitely an area that we can work very closely with. Of course, on the issue of appointments, I think Ambassador Ellen will speak to it, but definitely the government is on the lookout. I agree about the issue that people don't have to come for physical meetings. And we have a lot of talent out there, Kenyans who have expertise, especially in these new age industries, who can bring a lot of brain power, so to say, to government. So of course, these are areas that we can work on. I love the emphasis on the issue of investments, because yes, a lot of the money that is being sent is consumption money, but we need to work together to find how do we really encourage Kenyans in the diaspora to make investments, and as David has said, not just in the area of housing where there's been an over-concentration of investments. I think there are opportunities out there. Of course, we need to work on the trust issue and create avenues that when people are making an investment, they know that they are making a valid investment and with people that they trust. So yes, let's keep this conversation. And I think that the diaspora policy, even if it's not the final whip, this whole process, but I think it gives us a good platform, and it becomes a good reference point that we keep on being reminded that this is what our commitment was to the diaspora through this policy. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Balozi. So probably just to, everybody has thrown the question back to me, but I just wanted to mention that indeed government has digital meetings. For example, this is a digital meeting. It's a very important meeting Previously, it would have been held in Presentia, but here we are having it online. So the government is very progressive in terms of having digital meetings, in terms of using the digital space. So that was a valid observation. It's unfortunate Mr. Onyalo's company was not chosen for the solar project that there was, but perhaps also the issues of costs might play a part. The issues of, we know that for solar, our main problem has been the batteries. A lot of farms want to sell the solar panels without the accompanied batteries. And sometimes the cost of the batteries far surpass the cost of the solar panels. So this is something that I think a lot of government entities have been trying to explain, that when there's a solar project, it is important to look at the component of the batteries and also to try and get at the very minimum, lithium phosphate batteries, not just the lithium ones, which I think lately have caused some fires in houses, in firms. We've had fires just breaking out because the lithium batteries were full to capacity and they were not lithium phosphate. So there are small issues that then make decisions be made a certain way. It's unfortunate then that I want to believe your proposal was one of the best that they had, but there could have been certain reasons. We could probably take this discussion offline to assist. Having said that, I totally agree with Ambassador Kabira that there is so much to invest in. I think our Diaspora Investment Conference last year highlighted some of the issues. Agriculture was one of them, and we were challenging people from different areas. For example, the people from Nyandarua, could they come together and do a cold storage for the potatoes? They keep throwing potatoes year in, year out. They pour the milk. Could we do something about that as the diaspora and turn it into an income generating venture, but within the counties? So the counties are very welcoming investments from the diaspora. We have a department that is headed by Ambassador Anne Wanjohi. I'm not sure if she's in this meeting, but she's one of those who has been talking with the counties. She's the focal point with the counties, and they have been trying to see how the diaspora can aggressively and more intentionally invest in the counties. So the opportunities are immense. If you look at the leather industry, it's now picking up, but that has been a nascent industry for very long. If you look at even the beef industry, the animal industry, there's so many animal products. It's being run by non-Kenyans. There's an opportunity there because we have I'm made to understand our beef is one of the best in the world. So we have that. We have goats that go to Oman in shiploads. So there are all these opportunities which we've not taken advantage of. But I want to mention specifically the Konza Diaspora Center. This is a center that we negotiated with the diaspora, particularly for skills transfer. So we are looking, and also of cultural transfers. We are looking at how we can partner with the diaspora to have summer schools. We know that during summer, people take their holidays. What if some of you are able to come back and do technology transfer, skills transfer through summer schools? So this is something that we are working out. It is work in progress. And we're also looking at some of our children don't know their roots. And we're not talking about zamani za kale paukwa pakawa kulikuwa na sungura na fisi. Those are important to know, but we want our youth to connect with the youth in Kenya, to exchange ideas, for them to feel they are part and parcel of Kenya. And I've been told that the youth will only feel that way when they're able to connect with the youth in Kenya and they're able to exchange ideas. So we are listening to everybody. We are listening to all the ideas. And we are embracing all the diaspora to be able to serve you better. We are not here to dictate what it is we're going to do. We are here to listen to what you have to say and to try and make it work. In terms of appointments, I think Ambassador Kabira was very clear that there's a lookout. There's been several diaspora who have been appointed. Several. I'm not sure why It is not clear that the diaspora have been appointed. There's been very many who have been appointed. Of course, the appointing authority remains with the presidency, but I know there's been very, very many technical persons who've been appointed to various capacities in the government. So this is ongoing, and I want to believe many more will be appointed to the government. My colleagues, our director Mwaura, you are part and parcel of writing this document. I am sure you have some comments. I cannot see our director Emma, but I can see Eugene Makoha is there. I can see which other colleagues are here. Colleagues who are here, please, you can, this is your, here is Emma. Emma, please say something. Emma is our Director for Welfare and Rights. She's the one who is at the forefront of the policy because we are indeed looking for the rights and welfare of the diaspora first and foremost. Because we also believe that once your welfare is taken care of, then you're able to invest better. Emma, are you able to log in? I saw your hand.
Yes, Balozi, I'm present.
Please contribute.
At the moment, I wish to appreciate our diaspora in Australia for their immense contribution to the diaspora policy. And I have noted their sentiments with regard to repatriation and integration of our diaspora when they land in their new destinations. And I believe, as you and Balozi Kabira has indicated, we are going to take it up and see how maybe to incorporate the same in our policy to ensure that our people are comfortable when they go seeking for employment outside there. For now, I don't think I have much to say other than to appreciate the whole team for the input. Thank you, Balozi.
Director Mwaura.
Thank you very much, Barozi, and our colleagues. For me, I want to appreciate the inputs that we are getting. Initially, I not think that we might get these good comments, and which will shape up the document. And let me assure you, Inadimas, that all the comments which have come from you people, they'll be incorporated in the final document. And today we have the first meeting with this region. Tomorrow and Friday we shall have a meeting with the other regions, and all the comments will be incorporated and implemented. We shall share. I think this should come from Barozi Helen with the final document after launching. Thank you, Barozi Helen.
Any other director who's online? I do not see any, and so I hand this back. Any closing remarks? Probably, I don't know. What do we do next, Director Mwaura?
I think because you opened the meeting, Barozi Isaiah can do the final closing remarks, I think.
Ambassador Kabira.
Thank you very much, Chair, Ambassador Helen, for driving this process. Mwaura and your team, we want to appreciate all that you have inputted. Once again, really is to say thank you so much to members of the Kenyan in diaspora. I know some of you in some long time zones that you have taken time to really make some very positive contributions. We just really want to appreciate that. And as we said earlier, we see this as a partnership. We see this diaspora policy as a way to, in any way, try and create a strong and long-lasting partnership We appreciate the role that you play in our socio-economic development. And really, for us, as was said earlier, nothing is cast in stone yet, even for those of you who've not had time to have a final look at the document. But these are the final stages. We're in the validation stage. And the earlier we implemented it, because there's still a process that needs the document will have to go to cabinet, go to parliament. But what we want is really ownership of a document that serves you well. So asanteni sana, we appreciate you, and let's keep the conversation. There's somebody who mentioned the issue about our email address. Please just try and resend the mail that you wanted to send out to the address that Helen did give. We want to assume that. So being in contact with you, being in touch with you is the best way that we can serve you. So thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Asanteni sana, kwaherini. Kwaherini, please, if you have any more, the email is diaspora@mfa.go.ke. Diaspora@mfa.go.ke. Asanteni sana.
Please, could you post that on the chat, please?
It has been posted severally, but we will post it again.
Okay.
Okay, it is here, diaspora@mfa.go.ke. Karibuni sana.
Thank you. Up there. Asante sana.
Asante sana. Bye.
Thank you, colleague. Thank you very much, Barosis.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.